Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Williams, Senior Editor for Defense One, and your moderator for today's conversation, Piloting Software Innovation. The march of digital technologies will change government and defense operations as we know it. In order to shape the future and be competitive in the digital age, the U.S. government and military will need to embrace new evolving technologies, as well as the ideals of innovation, agility, and efficiency. The U.S. Air Force is spearheading many of these efforts through innovative collaboration with industry partners and the creation of well over a dozen software factories in a singular ecosystem. Joining me today is Corsair Ranch's software engineer, Ashik Khatri. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Ashik.
Pleasure to be here.
So I want to jump right into the conversation. And can you tell us a bit about what Corsair Ranch is and how it fits into not just the Air Force's efforts to push forward software modernization, but the Defense Department writ large?
Yeah, absolutely. So Corsair Ranch, we here got stood up in 2019 as part of the AATC down in Tucson, Arizona. It kind of comes up out of the DoD's effort to modernize software delivery and software development efforts. So traditionally, we've been pretty waterfall-based model of software development. Acquisition and delivery timelines are upwards of a year or 2 years or more, just to get some software out, right? You have your requirements and you go from there. But that needs to kind of scale up and get on par with the Silicon Valley, how we build and deploy software. So that's where the DoD DevSecOps initiative comes in 2018, really talking about how we can use modern tools and technologies like GitOps and really deliver software in a more faster, continuous way. And so that's where Corsair Ranch kind of comes into play. We developed a software for the test center to really manage their test flight management process. We built a web application for them to really go after how they were processing their test flights. It's a web application, more secure, and that's kind of where we got our start from.
Thanks for that. So how does Corsair Ranch kind of differ from other software factories within the Air Force? I mean, you mentioned that you guys are specifically with the test center, but like we mentioned at the top, there are dozens. There's Kessel Run that's very well known with the Air Operations Center. Can you talk a little bit about what makes your particular software factory unique?
Yeah, absolutely. So Corsair Ranch, we're really focused more on the ARC, Air Reserve Component, and we really try and focus in more on our customers. Kessel Run's huge. They have millions of dollars in funding, but over here, we are pretty small. We have about 5 full-time engineers, and it's supported by GTRI. So we're all GTRI engineers supporting the Corsair Ranch software factory and really looking to scale up more focused Air Reserve Component and the Guard and helping them grow their software capabilities. So that's kind of our really niche focus area.
And what are some of the barriers and challenges to not just software development and delivery, but I guess that innovative, disruptive part?
Yeah. Innovative, disruptive part really comes from really working with our customers and bringing the focus of more collaborative software development. That's really what we focus in on more, obviously using DevSecOps, but really looking at user-centered design, really working with our customers. We have a really nice offices here, very collaborative, in the sense like we can bring in, whiteboard a solution, sit with our users, really bring that Silicon Valley mentality into the DoD space, right? We have weekly demos with our customers, and really like being able to rapidly prototype a solution. As quickly as, within a day or two, we could have something out to show to our customer and get really early feedback. If they like it, we keep continuing that process, right? A very sprint and agile driven process is really what we bring forward. And we always hear the government, DoD, everywhere just using Excels for basically everything and access databases, which don't really scale very well. So really tying in all of those components together and building software that can be more collaborative, designing them so that they're more user-friendly and really hits what the needs are of the users, rather than hoping that after 2 years of development, they go back and use it and it's not really quite what they wanted.
I want to keep on this line of conversation and can you talk about some of the prototype solutions that you've been able to come up with, I guess recently, it's the last 3 months or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier TMI, that's been done, but more recently we've been taking on a couple of efforts. One of them being a pay audit tool. So we work closely with Artworks here in our office space. We co-share the space. So they bring in a lot of ideas and problems come through them, and they kind of look at those problem sets, and we're with them right here as a software factory. So if there is any software related issues that come through, we take those on. So they got tagged by the Alaska Air National Guard about a problem for their pay auditing system, where their members weren't really getting paid accurately for certain special pays. There was a big congressional inquiry and all, and they really wanted a solution that was that would do the automation for them, because going through hundreds of thousands of members, backdating like years, it will take a lot of manpower to do it manually. So we got they already have a software that they are supposed to get, but that keeps getting delayed by years and years, and they need a solution now. So what we did, we brought in, so we looked at this problem set, really like sat down with them, really try and understand what the problem is. And we put an airman, a young airman, through our code militia effort to kind of work on that solution, build a small prototype for them and deliver it to them. And that person was with us for about a month. He sat in our office, worked with all the talented engineers we have here, and delivered a small Python-based prototype, give it to them. They started using it. They were like, okay, this is great. This helps us, but they really wanted something even more comprehensive. And so we went out to their base, really talked through more with them, looked at their solution, what they're currently their current way of doing things, and really looked at and started working with them. And so now we are in a prototype phase where we're delivering a more comprehensive web solution, which is super simple for them to manage, really taking all of their systems. They use access databases with scripts that are kind of actually going to be discontinued soon by their IT department for security reasons. And so they really want something now, and that's what we're working on currently. And it's a great effort, and we are working actively to bring some of their members back work with us while we develop the software, so that way they can so we don't have to do a lot of the sustainment efforts afterwards. And it really allows to keep the cost low for us. We prototype it, we build it, we deliver it. The whole thing is on platform one, so it's on a continuous integration and deployment, very microservice architecture. So really taking all the state-of-the-art tools and deploying every day essentially to them.
I want to kind of bring up something I had in a separate conversation. I recently spoke with the Defense Information Systems Agency's a program manager for Vulcan. That's like their new software factory, software toolkit. And he mentioned that, continuous integration is something that DoD does really well, but the continuous delivery is a bit of a challenge. And that's something that everybody's really grasped. How do you feel about that?
People do get, there's always a little about delivery when it comes to where does it go. Over here, Corsair Ranch, we really use platform one. We've been using it for a few years now. For us, it works really well because our tech stack is mostly web applications right now. So the delivery is not an issue for us. So far, we are able to just do the integration and deploy at any, like up to IL6 environment, literally at a push of a button. It works great for us, but I do know there are challenges around mobile deployment, and other embedded systems, maybe desktop systems. Platform one is not equipped currently to handle those things. And that really comes into like, who does the ATOing, and what's the process like? And I do believe there's more work to be done in that area to really get something really concrete, kind of ironed out, a process that can be used for that.
And following on that similar line of thought, software is becoming increasingly intertwined in pretty much everything that the Defense Department does, particularly when you're talking about, weapon systems. It's not just, email and instant messaging solutions. It's in everything from an aircraft, to, a smart helmet and sensors and everything like that. Can you talk about continuous deployment and security and policy changes that may need to be adjusted to kind of meet this increased need, especially from your seat?
So I think there's a lot of security concerns on how we do a lot of things, and it gets more and more important. We have Iron Bank, where we have our hardened containers. That's a good first step towards having something more robust and secure. There's also a Big Bang, both of which are managed by Platform One right now, and it's a good base starting point for those for getting to the next steps. I think there's a lot of things in terms of doing sensors and data related pipelines, big data, and just being able to take the data in real time from the field and kind of communicating with those things on edge nodes, on cloud and cloud environments. So those are a lot of challenges that come with it. And I do think there's some assistance that can be had from policy perspective, and there's a lot of push and talk about it. So Corsair Ranch is part of a software coalition, so we have regular talks about those things. How do we kind of influence or guide or suggest just policy making before it's actually established. Some of those discussions are very crucial in where we go next. I think just being able to add things on top of Big Bang and Iron Bank infrastructure, and looking at open source software and really getting a more quality control, so to speak, would be some good steps that we could take as we go forward with modernizing.
So you mentioned quality control. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on, what has kind of come out of these coalition meetings? Because, the DoD loves coalitions, they love functional teams and steering groups. So can you talk, especially because, software has become such a major priority coming all the way from the top, the Deputy Defense Secretary, Kathleen Hicks, has definitely been vocal about this. Can you talk about what's come out of this coalition and also your contribution, or Corsair Ranch's contribution?
Absolutely. So the coalitions kind of started earlier this year and late last year. We've been kind of growing, and it really initially started with like, hey, so let's get all the coalitions or get all the software factories together and really find out what each one is doing, what are some of our strengths, and who are our customers. So just kind of getting more of an idea of what each one is doing. And then since then, we've been kind of going on and discussing more collaboration things. So we have a website now, coalition.af.mil. So we've been kind of organizing around those things. I think the biggest value that kind of comes from this is being able to leverage each other's talents. So being able to talk to them, have a direct line of communication. We have a Mattermost channel group where we can really talk to like-minded individuals, really get bounce ideas off of each other. So that's been very monumental, establishing those connections. And even at Corsair Ranch right now, as we're scaling up some of our efforts into data modernization, not just software modernization, just going into more how we really process data and move and scale data, do data and do analysis on edge and on-prem or cloud. So there's not so much in that area. So really bouncing off of other software factories, how they get around to getting an ATO or a continuous ATO to do other things that's not covered by Platform One. So those are some of the things that we've been finding more value in by just reaching out to other factories like Best Bin or a Platform One, Castle Run, those kind of things.
I have a governance question for you, but before that, I want to ask you, can you elaborate a little bit more on the data modernization piece and what you guys are doing there?
Sure, absolutely. So this really started off with AATC here in Tucson, and we started last year. As I mentioned earlier, we've been doing TMI, and that's been great for the flight test process, but really looking now at more of the data level as well. So you go fly, you get data, and where does it go from there, right? Like there's so much valuable information. How do we process that information in an automated fashion so we don't spend a lot of time someone just, I don't know, looking through video data? Like a lot of those things can be automated by software. And so that's what we started looking into right now. We wrote a white paper around it to really identify all the different areas that we could tackle to get to solving this problem for the ARG or just even Airforce at large, really. And so that was done in fall of last year. We delivered the white paper to the ATC. since then, identifying the problems. And now we are actually building a prototype, working with several partners. There's Raft, GTRI, of course, taking the lead on this for Corsair Ranch. And then there's Microsoft also in the loop for providing some of the hardware gear, and Azure. So really working with a lot of partners, building a data fabric, and really tackling this problem using open source architecture, building a dashboard where they can really interact with Minio buckets and kickstart automation and replication in the cloud and on edge, and being able to parse Chapter 10 data and just allowing a lot more faster and more robust data infrastructure, really.
Great. And so back to the governance question, I think it's been well established that, the software efforts are pretty decentralized. That every organization within the Defense Department, within the military services, they're all doing, their own thing, which has definitely its benefits and definitely can contribute to, the coalition when you all come together and discuss what you're doing. Do you think that there should be a centralized effort or oversight? I know, with the Air Force, you guys did formerly have a chief software officer. What are your thoughts about that sort of structure where things are kind of going through one node instead of being everywhere?
So that's a good topic, good question. I think what Nick Shalane did with Platform One was an excellent first step. I think it helps smaller software factories like us to really get going faster at a relatively low cost. I think cost is one of those things that can come down depending on a lot of different factors, can go up as well. But really, centralized software platform, I think there's value to having that. If you look at the industry, for instance, there's lots of different platform as a service solutions. There's Heroku, DigitalOcean. These are massive companies which really help lots of organizations get up to speed faster, being able to deploy quickly. So I think if a similar approach in the DoD space can also work, having something centralized, but also have options available. And if you really do want to go and do your own for whatever reason, I think having a good set of criteria and requirements would be essential and crucial. So, we want to make sure that the security is not compromised if someone goes out and does their own. That's where we have Big Bang, Iron Bang. So kind of building off of those things and making sure the security is there and validated, but also having centralized is not bad, but also having options is good. And I think that's always been a good thing for us in general, to have options to pick and choose.
And one of those options, in a way, is the use, or at least exploration of using open source code and software. Can you talk about Corsair Ranch and your approach to that?
So open source is great. It allows a lot of collaboration amongst different individuals and groups and organizations. Many great tools are open source today. But I think we do have to be a little bit careful about what we choose, what library we choose. If you go on GitHub, there's like a million million of these things. Corsair Ranch here, we actually did some work with Corsair Ranch GTRI, like kind of like a pet project, a little really looking at NPM repository and then Flutter's pub dev, really looking at all those repositories and trying to kind of identify how active is a open source library, kind of trying to give it like a risk assessment score, so to speak, based on how many people are contributing, how much code is being contributed each commit. So really, we do have to look at this more closely. I think it's not safe really to just pick any library. There can be issues with open source. And so I think a second look or some automated way to scan a library more comprehensively. We do have a lot of checks already in place. If you use Platform One, for instance, there's it provides tools like SonarQube, which you could get independently as well, to do those code quality checks, static analysis. Those things are good first step, but there is more work to be done just to be able to identify good software that we use. And especially at Corsair Ranch, we do look at libraries that are actively used, maintained, and developed before going out and just picking one. Yeah.
And we have just a few minutes left, so I'd love to use that time to pick your brain about what's next, not just for Corsair Ranch, but what's next for software development, and how is there something beyond DevOps or DevSecOps?
Absolutely. So I think software is always evolving. The way we do things is always constant improvement. Kubernetes and those things are really great. I think the big push right now in software is really to go after, at least in the DoD space, to really go after data and machine learning, artificial intelligence, which gets a very tricky subject depending on who you talk to. But I think those are things that have been that's very hot and actively discussed in the DoD space, MLOps. So yeah, I think that's kind of the space where we're going as well right now.
Ashok, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. If you missed any part of this or you want to share it with your colleagues, the on-demand program will be available shortly, so keep an eye on your email. Until next time, I'm Lauren Williams.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our program today, and thanks to my colleague Lauren for that informative discussion with Ashik Khatri. I'm George Jackson, Vice President of Events at GovExec, and I'm excited to welcome you to our program, Piloting Software Innovation, brought to you by Caresoft and Dell. Joining me today, Michael Burns, Senior Director of Dell Technologies Federal. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, George. How are you?
Doing good. So get us started here. What are some of the major challenges you see as agencies encounter this area of data in the cloud? Give us a few examples here.
Yeah, I think data in general, the challenge is one of volume, right? That we're continuing to see increased data volume. Another one right now is around the velocity of data. So as we see the edge use cases starting to grow, the places where the data is being created is different than it traditionally has been, right? So now there's a temporal nature to that data. So how do I process it quickly? How do I get it to the places I need it to be, right? And how do I do that in a way that makes sense from an application perspective, right? Part of that challenge as well then is certainly from a cloud perspective is as I start to move more and more of that data around, I start to incur ingress and egress fees, right? So the ability to be able to have capacity on demand is amazing, but the more I use the data, the more costly it becomes. The other thing we're seeing is just in general, greater threat from a cyber perspective, right? Data is what these folks are after. So ensuring that the data, regardless of where it is secure is certainly a key for all of our customers.
I love that phrase too, that you use, temporal nature of data. Talk a little bit about that cost aspect, Mike. What should agencies, IT leaders consider across public sector?
Yeah, I think it's understanding where do I need to have the data, right? And I think as much as possible, especially now with this emerging edge use case, can I do more with the data locally, right? Can I take that data and convert it into information, right? And what that conversion does is, one, reduce the amount of data, right? But it also potentially gives me faster insights into what I'm getting from the data. So it's truly looking at, instead of moving data around, let's be smart and move information around, right? And then it's, can I find an automated way to make sure I have the right data in the right place to maximize the value?
You've been working very closely on something called Apex Flex on Demand. Tell us about it. How does it address some of the challenges you've outlined here?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for customers historically when purchasing storage is understanding how much storage do I need to buy, right? As we started this, we talked about the growth of storage. It's very unpredictable. So historically, what customers would do is typically overbuy, right? That they would typically buy enough capacity for 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? And in a lot of cases, they might even use that capacity faster. So what that meant for agencies is very large upfront costs, right? So whether on day one, I might only need a small amount of data, but if I'm buying 5 years worth of capacity, I'm paying for it all upfront, whether I use it or not, right? And in some situations, they might not use all that, but they've still paid for it. What Flex on Demand does is bring more of a cloud-like consumption model to on-premises storage and data center infrastructure. So we give the customer the ability to be able to pay as they use it, right? To consume it in a consumption sort of model and to pay a cost per gigabyte that would be cost comparative to a public cloud. The advantage there clearly is the fact that you can pay as you grow. Dell Technologies or our partners, right, we'll put excess capacity on the floor for the customer. So there is the ability to be able to grow into what's there, but they don't have to buy 5 years worth of capacity up front. So it's truly bringing more of a cloud-like consumption model to on-premises data storage infrastructure.
More agencies and organizations look to edge computing, at least piloting or experimenting with it. How does this Apex model tie in to edge?
Yes, that's a great question. And certainly to your point, edge is the largest emerging use case that we are seeing from a federal agency perspective, right? That the ability to be able to, and we should think of edge not so much as just a computer, right, or a server or something that sits out there at the edge. What edge is the ability to be able to have compute, have some level of intelligence, to have data storage, right? The ability to be able to truly take sensor data and things like that. This is not necessarily new. What is new is the way now we're giving the agencies value in that data and the ability to be able to action on that information. What's key from an Apex perspective, again, is I may not know how large my edge use case needs to be, right? That as technology continues to evolve, as we get more and more sensors, right? As we gather data and get insights in that data, we want more data, right? So what Apex gives the customer, again, is the ability to be able to start relatively small, but grow over time and only pay for those pieces that they're utilizing. So it truly is bringing more of that cloud-like model, right, to the on-premise infrastructure.
You mentioned earlier, Mike, the rise in attacks on data. We're covering more and more this term related to cyber or an agency's cybersecurity posture, resilience. How does Apex, how does this approach lead to more maybe control or cyber recovery capabilities?
Yeah, certainly to your point, right? The amount of cyber, we have a cyber attack now every 39 seconds, right? That occurs within the world. So that's just going to continue to increase. Certainly for our federal agencies, they're not only the target of hackers, they're also the target of foreign nation states and things like that. So it is absolutely essential that they keep their data safe. I think it's a multi-pronged approach. It's a layered approach to cyber resiliency. It is ensuring clearly that the systems are designed in a way that that makes them more secure. It's ensuring that we're adopting and following the practices of zero trust as much as possible. It's things like secure supply chain, right? And making sure that those systems have not been altered in any way, shape, or form from time of manufacture until they're put into use, right? It's the ability to be able to quickly and easily update and manage those systems, right? And then ultimately, it's through technology such as snapshotting, right? Immutable copies. It's the ability to be able to ensure I have backup copies of all that data. And then ultimately, the ability to be able to have some sort of a cyber vault that actually has an air gap between the production systems and the recovery systems, right? That as much as we want to prevent a cyber attack, what's even more important is the ability to be able to recover from one, right? And the history, both from a disaster recovery perspective and even now today from a cyber perspective, the history of customers' ability to recover when they don't have a good copy of that data, unfortunately, it's not very good. So it's a multi-layered approach. Part of what Flex on Demand can do is take all those pieces and parts and include them into the Flex on Demand contract. So as your data grows, your data protection and your cyber capabilities can grow as well.
I have a question about need, Mike. You mentioned ingress and egress. There was a huge shift in the public sector IT landscape a few years back with the onset of the pandemic. You've got a lot of employees working remote these days that didn't used to work remote before. And there's a certain amount of uncertainty on when that might happen. Does that word flex in this product, the ingress, the egress that you mentioned, does that suggest that we're in a time where there's a level of uncertainty around how much data agencies need, when they need it, that requires a different type of mindset, a different type of approach to data?
Yeah, I think as agencies gather more data and start to derive value from that data, it continues to derive new opportunities for data and want more and more data, right? As these data scientists become more ingrained, they want more data, right? So all of a sudden, what was a smaller data set becomes a bigger data set. And the larger the data set, the more insights they can start getting from that data. So part of it is, bringing more of that data together, but part of it is being smarter about creating connections between the data, right? And that's one of the things is to your point about flexing, yes, right? There's always going to be that extra capacity in the box. One of the things we need to be able to do from an IT perspective is enable the developers and the business users to be able to move faster, right? And one of the traditional challenges with on-premises IT is a 4 to 6 month lead time to get equipment, right? By the time you go through the contracting process, the procurement process, to get all the quotes, right? And all those sorts of things and get it shipped and get it installed, more often than not, the business need has moved, right? And it's moved to more of a public cloud setting to where you can show up and you can get access to the equipment that you need. So part of the overall Apex model is how do we better enable developers and business users to get access to the right technology at the right time?
I mean, it sounds like this provides a much more agile, a faster sort of speed to mission oriented solution. Am I reading that right, Mike?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's faster time to market. And then back to the idea of it's more cost effective as well, because you're only paying for what you're using.
So look into your crystal ball as we come to a close here, Mike. What does this enable agencies to do in the future? You know, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, where these types of solutions are in place and at everybody's fingertips and they have that foundation built. What can government do that it couldn't do before?
Yeah, I think they can innovate more, right? They can move faster. I think to your point that the more we can enable the developers, the data scientists, the other folks within the agencies, faster access to technology, the better we get, right? When we start thinking about some of these edge use cases, the ability to be able to create a tactical edge, right? For the warfighters, the ability to be able to put more information in that soldier's head. Hopefully what we do is save lives, right? When we start thinking about some of the other use cases that are out there from a law enforcement perspective, today it's very one way in that I'm collecting video and things like that, but maybe I can now send that video back. Maybe I can create better real-time communications, right? Provide better outcomes, ultimately provide a better government, right? Like technology is such today that it is the foundation of everything we do. So if we as a technology vendor can enable federal agencies to move faster, I think that's good for the entire country.
Michael Byrne, Senior Director of Dell Technologies Federal. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you, George. Have a wonderful day.
If you missed any part of today's event, look for an email later this week with a link to the on-demand video and share these conversations with your data and cloud-minded colleagues. For GovExec, I'm George Jackson. Have a great day.